The morning was thick with fog, wrapping the city in a cold silence. In a forgotten corner of that city, nestled between towering skyscrapers and glass walls that reflected wealth, sat a child who belonged to none of it. He was small, wrapped in scraps of cloth, sewn together with pieces of twine and instinct. His skin bore the grime of sleepless nights on concrete, and his eyes held a depth not learned through textbooks or classrooms, but through watching, enduring, and feeling the world forget him. The boy had no name people remembered. Some called him Ghost, others ignored him altogether. He slept beneath a broken billboard, near a bakery that tossed out stale bread after midnight. He never begged aggressively. He simply sat, watching people pass, observing faces, expressions, shoes, and stories that moved faster than anyone noticed. But he noticed, his eyes, too large for his sunken face, seemed to hold something, not just sadness, but knowing. It wasn't uncommon for strangers to glance at him and quickly look away, as if caught in something too raw, too real, and too inconvenient to recognize. What they didn't know, and what even the boy barely understood himself, was that he carried something ancient, something unspoken, a gift that surfaced only when pain reached a certain depth. He didn't understand how it worked. It came like a whisper in his mind, like a warmth in his hands. When someone was truly broken, not just sick or wounded, but aching at the soul, something in him responded. It had happened once, years ago, when a woman collapsed near the train station. She was having a seizure. People circled, recorded, shouted for help. He approached silently, touched her wrist, and whispered. She stopped, shaking. She sat up, she cried. Then she disappeared into the crowd, and he never saw her again. Since then, he avoided touching people. It drained him. Every time it happened, he would sleep for days, shivering with fever. It scared him. It felt like giving away a piece of himself. But when the pain in others was too loud, louder than the city, louder than his hunger, he couldn't help it. His body moved. His spirit responded. He sat one morning near a park bench when he saw the man. Tall, dressed in gray tailored wool, walking with heavy steps and hollow eyes. In his arms lay a girl, no older than 8, limp head resting against his shoulder. Her legs hung loosely, lifeless like wet cloth. The boy saw them and felt the familiar tremble in his fingers. The man stopped at the bench, sitting slowly, gently laying the girl down beside him. He wiped her brow with a handkerchief and stared at the ground. People passed, but none interrupted. Something about him, his silence, the grief written in his hands, made people uncomfortable. They recognized him. He was Frederick Langston, the billionaire developer who built half the skyline. Everyone knew his name. No one knew how to approach his sadness. Frederick had once been a symbol of ambition. He came from money, but he multiplied it. He turned old districts into modern marvels, invested in technology, erased small businesses to make room for luxury. But success had a cost. His wife left years ago, and his only daughter, Eliza, had fallen from a balcony 2 years prior, breaking her spine. No doctor could repair the damage. She hadn't walked since. The boy rose from his spot across the street and slowly crossed over. His steps were cautious, hesitant, almost reverent. He approached the bench, eyes not on the man, but on the girl. She looked peaceful, as if asleep. But the boy could feel the silent screaming inside her, a soul trapped behind still muscles and unresponsive nerves. He recognized it instantly. He stood just a few feet away and waited. Frederick finally looked up. His eyes narrowed. Do you want money? He asked, not unkindly, just tired. The boy shook his head. I'll heal your daughter, sir, he said. The man blinked, surprised. His expression shifted, searching for sarcasm or madness in the boy's face. But the boy said nothing more. He simply stood there, small, shaking slightly in the cold. You can't say things like that, Frederick muttered. Don't be cruel. I'm not, the boy replied. Please, let me try. There was a silence, long and heavy, as if time itself paused to listen. The boy stepped closer. Frederick watched, torn between skepticism and desperation. What harm could it do? He had tried everything else. Maybe a part of him wanted to see what the boy would do. Maybe a part of him believed. Frederick stood, nodded once, and the boy sat beside the girl. He asked for no water, no tools, no chants or rituals. He simply placed his hands gently on her legs. He closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. And then, he began to hum a low, cracked melody, like something forgotten from a dream. It wasn't a song of power or glory. It was soft. It sounded like sorrow mixed with hope. As he hummed, his palms began to tremble. A warmth spread from his chest into his arms, and he fought the urge to faint. He saw flashes in his mind, Eliza as a toddler, running in a field. Eliza, after the fall, staring at the ceiling with tears rolling sideways into her ears. Eliza, now, hidden inside a body that would not respond. He whispered to her legs, not in words, but in will, not walk, but remember, not move, but feel. The humming stopped. He leaned back. His lips were pale. His eyes barely open. He swayed. Then, Eliza stirred. Frederick gasped and fell to his knees. Eliza's fingers twitched first, then her toes. Slowly, impossibly, her legs shifted. She opened her eyes. Papa, she said softly. I can feel them. Frederick wept. The sound of it deep and unfamiliar, like a man breaking open for the first time. He touched her legs, her face, his own face, unsure if any of it was real. Eliza sat up slowly, and then, with trembling hands, tried to swing her feet down. Don't force it, the boy whispered. Frederick turned to him. The boy looked pale, exhausted. He stood unsteadily. How did you? Who are you? The man asked, barely able to form the words. I just listened. The boy said. Her legs forgot. I reminded them. Then he turned to leave. Frederick stood. Wait, where are you going? I need to know what you did. What you want. I don't want anything, the boy said, walking away, each step heavier than the last. I don't know how to explain it. It just happens when it needs to. Frederick tried to follow, but the boy disappeared into the alleyways like smoke. That night, he searched the streets. He sent his men. No one could find the boy. Some said he vanished. Others believed he never existed at all. But Eliza kept walking. She grew stronger every day. And Frederick Langston never forgot the boy's eyes, nor the voice that said, I'll heal your daughter. Not a promise, a truth. The morning after his daughter took her first steps in years, Frederick Langston awoke with a sensation he hadn't felt in decades: confusion, followed by awe. It wasn't the kind of confusion that comes from lack of sleep or too much drink. This was deeper, almost childlike. The sense of having witnessed something the rational mind couldn't process but the soul refused to deny. Eliza had walked, not staggered or crawled, but stood. Her toes, once frozen, had curled into the soft rug beneath the bed. Her legs, long declared unresponsive, had bent and held her. She stood, then took a single step toward him, eyes filled, not with fear but something far more difficult to define belief. He didn't remember falling asleep. He only remembered weeping, holding her, repeating her name over and over like a prayer. Somewhere between exhaustion and joy, the weight of years had lifted off him so suddenly it left him breathless. When he opened his eyes the next day, she was sitting upright at the edge of her bed, humming softly. The nurses cried. The doctor, flown in the night before, found nothing medically conclusive, only stunned silence, followed by useless notes and urgent calls to colleagues. Frederick wasn't interested in the science anymore. What happened went beyond what could be charted or explained, and all he could think about was the boy. He asked his staff to find him. Every doorman, shopkeeper, and delivery driver in the district was questioned. Posters were quietly made with a sketched image from Frederick's memory-sunken cheeks, sharp eyes, oversized clothes, maybe 12 years old. No name, no fingerprints, no records. It was as if the boy had never existed. But Frederick knew better. The boy existed. And he had changed everything. For the first few days, Frederick's obsession with finding the boy was all-consuming. He walked parts of the city he'd never set foot in before. Places that weren't part of his empire. Alleyways behind grocery stores, tunnels beneath overpasses, makeshift camps hidden in parks. He moved through these spaces not as a wealthy man hunting for something, but as a father searching for someone to thank. But each time, he came up empty. By the second week, something began to shift in him. The search was still alive, but now it was accompanied by a new discomfort, not about the boy's absence, but about the world he was now walking through. The man who had once ordered entire blocks to be cleared for luxury condos was now stepping over wet cardboard shelters. He noticed the elderly man shaking in a blanket, too thin for winter. He noticed the little girl digging through trash behind a restaurant. He noticed the stares of people who had been rendered invisible by his ambition. These things had always been there. But now he saw them. It wasn't just a change of perspective. It was as if a door had opened in his mind, and behind it lay the parts of the world he had trained himself not to see. In the days that followed, the guilt came, slow and heavy. It pressed on him in board meetings, in morning reports, in the grand office that overlooked the skyline he helped build. He would glance at polished tables and realize they had been paid for with silence. He would reread memos and contracts and find the hidden blood in the margins, families displaced, histories erased, communities flattened under the wheels of progress. He looked at himself in the mirror and wondered who he had become. The breaking point came 2 months after Eliza's healing. It was a gala his own, in fact hosted in his name, to fund yet another tech tower. Celebrities arrived, wine flowed, speeches were made. Frederick stood at the podium in a room full of applause and could not speak. He stared into the crowd, into the expensive clothes and curated smiles, and felt utterly hollow. It was as if the words had fled from his mouth, taking his identity with them. He left without a word. That night, he went to Eliza's room and found her sketching with charcoal on the floor. She had drawn the boy's face from memory. His eyes were just as Frederick remembered, deep, sorrowful, alert. Below it, she had written 3 words: "He gave everything." Frederick sat beside her, silent. He knew, without asking, that Eliza had felt the same thing he had felt that day. The boy hadn't healed her like a magician or a doctor. It hadn't been technical. It had been sacrificial. As if he had poured a part of his own strength into her and walked away weaker for it. That's why he hadn't stayed. That's why. He looked so tired. It was that night Frederick made a decision. Not a dramatic one, not something he announced with headlines or reporters, but something quiet and permanent. He called his legal team the next morning. The following weeks, he transferred ownership of multiple properties, anonymously donated large sums to free clinics, created housing projects without profit margins, and rewrote internal policies to protect rather than extract. His board was stunned. Some threatened to resign. Others begged him to reconsider. He listened to them with the patience of someone who had finally found a language worth speaking. He began walking the city on foot, not as a gesture, but as a need. He sat on benches, handed out food himself, and listened to stories. People were suspicious at first. He didn't blame them. His name had been associated with power, not presence. But gradually, they realized he wasn't there for show. He didn't bring cameras. He didn't post on social media. He simply showed up. Every time he passed a shadowy corner, he looked for the boy. Not just out of gratitude, but out of concern. He knew the boy had given something away, that day, something vital. He feared the cost of it. He feared he might be out there now, weaker, colder, perhaps unable to wake up one morning. The thought haunted him. He hired a small, discreet team, whose only job was to find the boy, not to study him or put him on display, but to protect him, feed him, house him. Months passed, and still nothing, but the work continued. Not the search. Frederick's transformation. He no longer lived in the penthouse. He kept a modest apartment above a soup kitchen he helped fund. His clothes were simple. His habits changed. He spent his days visiting shelters, clinics, libraries, places where the overlooked tried to rebuild their lives. People asked him what caused his change. He rarely gave details. He would only say, "A boy with nothing reminded me. I had everything and not enough of it mattered." Eliza continued to grow stronger. She walked daily. She danced. She asked questions about the boy, too. She remembered his song and sang it often, quietly, when she thought no one could hear. She, too, had changed. She spent time with children, in recovery wards, wrote stories for kids in hospitals, and once asked her father, what if the boy wasn't meant to stay? What if he's healing someone else now? That question stayed with Frederick. Eventually, his company changed. Not in brand, but in spirit. It became a force for repair, rather than expansion. Buildings were redesigned with dignity in mind. Empty properties were offered to the displaced. Former employees, who had once been fired for resisting aggressive development, were invited back as advisors. Even competitors began to follow his lead, not out of charity, but because people noticed. Investors, who once valued his efficiency, now respected his integrity. He no longer searched for the boy with urgency. The desperation had turned to reverence. He still hoped to see him again, but he no longer believed he had to. The boy had done more than heal a girl. He had healed a man's vision. Years passed. One winter evening, Frederick found a small envelope tucked into the gate of the soup kitchen. Inside was a scrap of cloth the same color and stitching as the boy's coat from that day. No note, just the cloth. Frederick smiled. He never spoke of it to anyone. He placed it in a glass frame beside Eliza's childhood drawing, and every time he looked at it, he remembered who he had been, and who he was now,